The ever-growing world of games, console games, online games, mobile games, all attracting greater participation and, for their creators, record profits. And the growing world of retro games, where nostalgia's booming for the simpler ping-pong animations of yesteryear. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Inside. Welcome to Insight. Let's talk video games. No longer a niche market for young, nerdy teenagers. Nowadays, it's a booming market. Accessibility, choice, more affordable games have certainly helped the sector become more popular and increasingly profitable. Today's global gaming industry is worth $99.6 billion, and it's still growing. Insight's Sarah Firth is game on for finding out more.
Do you know your World of Warcraft from your Minecraft, your Call of Duty from your Battlefield? We're at Insomnia, a major gaming festival, to take a closer look at the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. No longer just the domain of teenagers in their bedrooms. Conventions like this attract committed gamers from far and wide.
We've been gaming most of our lives together, and it's a new experience. We've never been here before, and it's just something different, and we can see if there's anything new coming out or evaluate it, because we spend most of our time jumping between different platforms, different games.
Here gaming fans get a chance to check out the latest consoles and gadgets, and games developers get to show off their upcoming games and technology. This is an industry that's predicted to grow to over $100 billion in the next few years.
I think digital Hollywood, where you actually are in the story, not watching the story. You are part of creating that story in the video game. It's an immersive experience, and it's the entertainment industry of the future.
In fact, gaming's eclipsed music in Hollywood for quite a while. As an entertainment industry, it's now the biggest on the planet. That's reflected in the blockbuster games titles, from the big franchises to indie games like Minecraft, written by one guy that went on to become the biggest game in the world. Many of the leading games will have budgets of between $50 to $100 million.
It's a big piece of work. People don't understand. They think games are small pieces of work. No, they can take years. Some games have even taken 7-8 years to come to market. The average is about 2 or 3.
It's a competitive industry, with games developers all chasing the next big hits. But with many popular games heavily featuring guns and violence, the industry's often come in for criticism. But we're told there's more to gaming than meets the eye.
People think of gaming as an antisocial hobby, but actually it's a very social one. I mean, a lot more people these days are engaging with other people online through the headsets, talking to other people who could be anywhere in the world.
That's certainly proved true for YouTube gamer Leo, who tells me video gaming saved his life.
It started out because I was suffering with anxiety in college, and I wanted something to be an outlet for me. So I started doing YouTube regularly as a form of trying to communicate with the outside world while still being secluded in my home environment. And from there, it just sort of brought in like a couple of people, and from there they kept on telling me stories about like how it was helping them and how just seeing these videos daily was helping them. And then that in turn helped me, and it became like a community sort of thing to just help each other out whenever we need.
Away from the games consoles, and these skills can potentially lead to a career option. It's not all fun and games. People who excel in the gaming world have a very specific skill set, and that's interested the likes of the Royal Air Force, who are using this event as a recruitment opportunity.
At the moment we're looking at cyberspace communications specialists and equally communications and electronics engineers. So they're two different roles, one supported by our fantastic apprenticeship opportunity, and the other one's an engineering officer role. So again, we are looking at obviously the future of cyberspace and how that will affect us and how we can look to recruit within that field.
This is a celebration of all things gaming, a fantasy video la la land. From PCs to PlayStation, virtual reality to augmented reality. You might not think you've caught the gaming bug yet, but if you've ever played Candy Crush on your smartphone, you two are quite likely a part of this growing gaming world. Sarah Firth, reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined by Saad Chowdhury, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at Miniclip, which is an international digital games company. What, in your view, makes a great game?
Oh, that's a billion-dollar question, isn't it, mine, as you've just learnt from your clips?
I want to hear the answer, then I can go make some $1 billion.
Well, I mean, if we all knew, we'd be doing it all the time. But I think, you know, a lot of people use conversations like delight the consumer and show something which is meaningful to play. But essentially what it is now that gaming's got so huge, there's so many different categories, it's really hard to kind of pin down what's actually the kind of
Which would be your favourite category? If you're going to kick back after a day at work and you're just going to spend a bit of me time, what would you put in the console?
Action and sports games is probably what, you know, defines my
Go and
play
shoot
time.
people, you mean?
Not always, no. Sport, FIFA as well, you know, play some football and play some Madden, you know, American football as well. So loads of different sports games.
For the novice, you better explain how this plays, because there you are, you're often playing against the computer, or you're playing against a friend?
Increasingly, we're playing online. We're playing against other friends. You know, it started in the early days where you'd have your friend on the couch.
Yeah.
Nowadays, two controllers side by side, you've plugged in. But nowadays, it's over the internet. You know, the connections are great. So online gaming has exploded. That is primarily now where most people are playing.
And that could be accessed through what a traditional computer or most of the consoles you'll get will allow you to do online participation.
Almost every single console or any device that allows you to play a game will be connected in some capacity.
So let me talk about loyalty, because if you've got hooked into a football game, whatever it might be, we all know the titles that exist out there. Do you tend to stay with that? Will you get the next iteration, the next version each time?
That tends to be the way for a lot of the market, but that's not always the case. Sometimes people will go to other games as well. I think quality and making sure that the experience is authentic to what the players have got accustomed to, but also showing some innovation every year is quite important. I think gamers are a much more sophisticated bunch nowadays, which means that they want to see improvements from previous versions. So it's not always the case of, well, I'm going to buy this game 1 year and then buy the same game the next year. Although I say that, some franchises seem to be very enduring and there's a lot of loyalty in these games.
And is it the technical performance of the game that is, in terms of, I'm thinking of the graphics, you know, if you're talking about a football game, the rendering of the players, action on the screen, the trajectory of the ball and things like that? Or is it more the complexity and the nuances of the strategy that actually improve?
That's a good question. I mean, I think in the early days we saw a lot of attention, and still to some extent today, that graphics was a big part of kind of the evolution of where games were going and driving a lot of the sales and driving a lot of the interesting games. But I think the graphics capability for a lot of games nowadays has got, I mean, there's still a lot of improvement. It's not, I wouldn't say plateaued, but they've got to a stage where they're very, very solid and very, very good. And now we're talking about nuances in the way in which games are kind of showing the real world or abstract worlds. So it is more about now the features and the complexity of the kind of game mechanics that people are seeing. But, you know, if graphics was such a big thing, then mobile gaming wouldn't be as big as it is today, you know, and
you mentioned mobile. That is the new kid on the block. Or not that new, I suppose, but it's certainly a new kid in the sense that this whole industry had built up by selling specialist PCs or the well-known consoles to consumers, and then suddenly these things burst onto the marketplace.
Yeah.
And by the measure of sort of engagement, they are now on a parallel with the others, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and fast increasing to overtake the kind of more traditional industry. That is what we concentrate on at my company. Mobile gaming is absolutely huge. You know, the metrics alone kind of tells you that everybody's got a phone. Everyone's got a smartphone in their pocket or some sort of device. And when you've got such strong computational and graphics capability access at will in your pocket, then obviously we're going to be able to provide great kind of experiences on those devices. So it just
the
means
screens, it's a little counterintuitive. You've
Yeah.
just invested in a huge television, maybe not the size of our
Sure,
screen in
sure.
this room, but, you know, and a console to power it, to make those graphics we were talking about really good. And you're going to shrink all that down to a screen, albeit a very nice one, this size.
Well, no, well, yes, of course, that's what I'm saying. It's not just all about graphics, it's a lot about gameplay. Gameplay is key to, when you say what's a success for a game, one of our top games is a game called Agario, which was, you know, most searched for game in 2015, the second most searched for game this year. And from a graphics perspective, you'd look at it and it's very, very simple. But from a gameplay perspective, it's very complex. There's a lot of layers of depth in that game, which many people on the surface may not see, but it's there. And it kind of culminated in it being featured in this season's House of Cards. So it's now what we're seeing is even mobile gaming kind of permeate its way into mainstream culture.
Would you say it stretches the mind, some of these complexities which you allude to, as a game of chess might?
Chess is kind of like, that's the game, right? That's the game that probably started it all. It depends, again, like the wide breadth of people playing games now. You know, when I looked at people and you would say gamer, you would think about somebody who would be on their PC playing some sort of shooter game, maybe then evolving into kind of playing on their console and playing, again, a sports or shooter game, and that would be considered quote-unquote a gamer. But if you actually talk to most people, you know, they're playing a lot of mobile games, whether they be kind of match-3 games, puzzle games, Sudoku on mobile phones, playing games like ours, like Pool, and things like that. And it's just, the wider the audience, the more genres that we're catering for them. So some are very complex, some have a lot of strategy involved, a lot of kind of, you know, how do you say, decision-making that needs to be made when you're doing each move in the game, to very, very simple things that even toddlers can pick up and play. And in fact, sometimes the toddlers are better than some of the adults. Yeah.
They are indeed. OK, stay with us on Insight. Coming up, Mario Brothers to Tetris. We take a stroll down the video game Hall of Fame.